Okay, so before we get into the bits and pieces of the data cleaning, there's a few ground rules to start off with. And these are just here to save you from a lot of heartache in the future. First, always create a backup copy of your original data. So in R, we tend not to mess with original data. Um, you have all your code laid out and you run the code and it spits out your output and then you're done, right? But there are some instances that we would want to create changes to the actual Excel file. For example, if in your data cleaning process you have missing data, you run multiple imputation, which takes a long time, you might want to save a copy of your cleaned data at the end of the process. That way, when you run your next analysis on it, you don't have to actually impute it each time. So that's always a good thing, especially if you're doing another heavy program such as doing like mediations or something, anything that requires bootstrapping. So make sure that if you're doing any changes to your original data, you save that backup original file. This is especially important for JASP, Excel, or other non-coding products because you do edit the data directly. Okay, and I've definitely had to go back and re-download the original data file because I needed to check things or because I messed something up. So just having it on hand is always a good idea. Okay, secondly, always create a record of changes. So in R, Python, and other programming approaches, best practice is to narrate what you're doing. The RMD files are fantastic for this. That's the reason why I love RMD versus just doing like the little hashtags and stuff in a straight R file. Why do you need to narrate it? A, you might forget why you did a thing, especially if you're going back to files from a couple years ago. Secondly, someone else might need to read your code. This is important when we're thinking about the data reproducibility, working in teams. Gestation, maybe one of your readers or committee members wants to see the code. They need to understand what you actually did and why. And then another reason would be that codes break when packages get updated or when it stops being supported. So if you can quickly understand what was going on, even if you haven't totally forgotten, but you don't have to read everything, that'll save you a lot of time. So you can quickly update that little bit of code. For those of you who might still be in SPSS land, you should be saving your code and narrating it just like we do in R. Yes, there's a whole coding side to SPSS. Dr. Bikos has some great stories about her time doing that. So you should be doing that, and that kind of takes care of it in the same way that does for R. For JASP, Excel, any other non-coding products, especially if you're using multiple programs for the same project, because sometimes one tool is better for something. Maybe this part's better in Python because that's your specific one that you like, but then you switch over to R for some complicated analysis that Python doesn't seem to do as well. You need to keep that narration going. So what I would do is to keep a whole separate document saying what changes and why, and I'll show you an example in a few minutes here. The last piece of this is to always make sure that you understand the variables. This is both from a very simplistic, like this variable name, this means this, and also what does it mean in terms of the entire organization, like the business context. So those of us who are more old school, remember SPSS, it has metadata. It has like those two tabs on the bottom. One gives the actual data, one has metadata. R, Excel, and other programs don't have it so neat and clean. And even when you do get an SPSS file, sometimes they'll give you a separate data map. And so you need to be able to store that metadata somewhere, some way, and that's usually in a spreadsheet. So I'm going to show you an example, a generic example, then I'm going to switch over and show you an example of something that I received and had to decode myself. Fun times.